So, how did it go?
Well, there's a lot of annoyance, not just in terms of what your texter said, but also because of concrete in schools. We've now got this list that has come out in the last 30, 40 minutes of all the schools in England that are affected. And actually, lots of back and forwards between Starmer and Sunak on this, not least Starmer saying, why didn't you know about this? Sunak saying, well, it's been around since 1984, why didn't you know about this when Labour was in power? But also saying, we've got this list together of schools that are affected. The Conservatives government has now published it for us to see, but actually in Labour-run Wales, they haven't published it. So lots of backwards and forwards about that. The main bit of the 6 questions that Starmer had, all 6 questions were on the same issue. Let's just have a look of what, in terms of what Keir Starmer said to Rishi Sunak.
Mr Speaker, they want more, so let me continue. Ferryhill School in County Durham was on Labour's building list in 2010. They scrapped it, and now children there are in a crumbling school. The truth is, this crisis is the inevitable result of 13 years of cutting corners, botched jobs, sticking plaster politics. It's the sort of thing you expect from cowboy builders, saying that everyone else is wrong, everyone else is to blame, protesting they've done an effing good job, even as the ceiling falls in. The difference, Mr Speaker, is that in this case, the cowboys are running the country. Isn't he ashamed that after 13 years of Tory government, children are cowering under steel supports, stopping their classroom roof falling in?
Well, Mr Speaker, this is exactly the kind of political opportunism that we've come to expect from Captain Hindsight over here. Before today, he's never once raised this issue with me across this dispatch box. It wasn't even worthy of a single...
It's the same for this side as well. Can I just say, we're going to have a calmer question times going forward. I want to hear the question, I want to hear the answers, just like your constituents, Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, before today, he never once raised this issue with me in Parliament. It wasn't even worthy of a single mention in his so-called landmark speech on education this summer. And if we'd listened to him, our kids would have been off school and locked down for longer. It's as simple as that. He talks about 13 years. Well, let's see what happened. When we came into office, 2/3 of schools were good and outstanding. Now it's 90%, Mr Speaker. We introduced the pupil premium to get more funding to the most disadvantaged pupils, Mr Speaker. Today, they are 75% more likely to go to university. And as a result of our reforms, we now have the best readers in the Western world, Mr Speaker. That's what 13 years of education reform gets you, all of which opposed by the party opposite.
Actually, considering the hole that Rishi Sunak was in there, he did all right, didn't he?
He came out fighting.
The cowboys running the country is quite a good line as well.
It is a good line from Starmer as well. He also pointed out that Labour, OK, he may not have raised the Prime Minister's questions, but Labour have put in over 100 written questions, quite a few of them coming from Bridget Phillipson, who's the Shadow Education Secretary. They also called a debate on it as well. But it was interesting that Rishi Sunak mentioned lockdown within that, saying that Labour would have had us locked down for longer, because that was the point, a major part of the point that Andrew Bridgen, who was a Conservative MP, now with Reclaim, raised. He had his Prime Minister's question, I think perhaps his first PMQ as a member of Reclaim. Let's see what he brought up in regard to the lockdowns and COVID.
Speaker, last week the Prime Minister stated that he was proud of his furlough scheme. I wonder, Mr Speaker, if he's equally proud of the 400 billion it put on the national debt and the inflation it's caused. Was he proud of the jobs lost, businesses closed and lives crushed due to the lockdowns? Is he proud of the increased NHS waiting list, premature deaths, and the 1 million young people now needing mental health support? And finally, Mr Speaker, is he proud of the excess deaths affecting every one of our constituencies that nobody wants to talk about? And will he give an undertaking to the British public, a solemn undertaking that they will never be inflicted upon them ever again?
Well, Mr Speaker, as the honourable gentleman knows, there is a formal inquiry regarding COVID which will examine all the decisions that were made, including lockdown and the impacts of them. But with regard to the furlough scheme, Mr Speaker, I am proud that at a time of extreme anxiety in the country, facing an unprecedented situation, that this government put its arms around the British public to ensure that we protected 10 million jobs. And as the report from the ONS showed last week, those actions, combined with all the other things we did to support the economy ensured that we had the fastest recovery through the pandemic of any European nation.
Andrew Bridgen being heckled. You're
Yes.
not welcome, I kept hearing somebody saying.
Yeah, I'm saying a number
That's
of...
nice, isn't it? Well, welcome to the mother of all democracies. You're not welcome.
You're not welcome. Well, it's
Really?
interesting in terms of mentioning excess deaths. He says
Yeah.
nobody wants to talk about it. We've talked about it quite a few times here on TalkTV. It is a big issue and something that continues. But it just shows, again, I think that these issues aren't often brought up in Parliament, but Andrew Bridgen is there to do so. Another issue which wasn't brought up nearly enough before it was implemented by Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, was ULEZ. And actually one of the outer London MPs, Louis French, who's the MP for Old Bexley and Sidcup, so sort of southeast London, the borders with Kent there. He brought this up as well, the very first question that was asked of Rishi Sunak today.
Louis French.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Labour Party used to claim that it represents working class people. But Labour's ULEZ expansion to Greater London will now hammer millions of working people with bills of £12.50 per day or £4,500 per year. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's unacceptable for Londoners and those in surrounding counties to face this regressive and unacceptable tax? And will he do everything that he can to help working people?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. It is disappointing that last week the Labour leader allowed the Labour mayor to introduce ULEZ, charging hard-working people £12.50 every time they start their car, adding to their burden of the cost of living. All I can say, Mr. Speaker, is while we focus on helping hard-working families, all he does is punish them.
Well, given the government's move to try and get more people back to work on off the welfare benefits system, it's good to see them all back at work.
Yes, indeed. And that actually didn't come up at all. It may have come up later in Prime Minister's question. I didn't see all of it.
Right.
But certainly the most of it that I watched before I came into the studio, it wasn't mentioned at all. So it seems to just sort of announced and disappeared.
Yes, they're going to go with schools, I'm sure, all the way
Of course,
through.
well, that's the big thing affecting so many people, whereas the proposals in regard to work and pensions and disabled people is only a consultation and wouldn't actually be implemented until 2025, by which stage a Labour government will almost certainly be in power.
Is that your prediction?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, I am the Professor Neil Ferguson of political prediction.
Indeed.
I predict things, I'm really confident about them, and they're always wrong.
Well,
so you'll probably have a Lib Dem government by the end of the year.
Well, surely not that, for heaven's sake. Peter Cardwell, thank you very much indeed.